So let's go started. All right. So our mock draft. So my mock draft for the 2021 NFL draft. For number 1, I have the Jaguars, of course, taking Trevor Lawrence. I also have at number 2, Zach Wilson. That seems to be where the Jets are headed, in that direction. Number 3, we found out today, reports showed that the 49ers are out on Justin Fields. They will not be picking him, and they'll make their decision between Mac Jones and Trey Lance in the coming days. I'll explain why I have Mac Jones there, because I don't believe he should be there. But number 4 is where I have the Falcons taking Jamar Chase. This was a close call for me. I thought Kyle Pitts could be in this spot, but I think at the end of the day, they're going to trade Julio Jones, so they're going to want to get another receiver there. I have Penei Sewell going to the Bengals. Joe Burrow, with that injury last year, had proved that they needed another tackle. They needed protection for him. And then I have a run of receivers right there with Waddle going to the Miami Dolphins, and then Devonta Smith going into the Detroit Lions. But, of course, that is not counting trades. I'm expecting someone to trade up within that sweet spot of 6 through 8 to potentially get someone there. But that's where I have these guys. Andrew, why don't you talk about your mock draft, your top 7?
So we pretty much agree on the first 2, with Sunshine going number 1 to Duval and Zach Wilson going number 2. Listen, I don't really agree with the Zach Wilson thing, but we spoke about that. But, the Jets seem to be so enamored with Zach Wilson that it's pretty inevitable at this point. At number 3, though, my thing is, despite what the reports say, I think a lot of it is smoke. And I think the smoke is meant to keep the Jets from coming to their senses and realizing that they're passing up on a potential generational talent in Justin Fields, and them taking Justin Fields to use him as leverage in a potential trade to acquire some more assets from San Francisco. That was with my number 3 pick. The 4 pick, I actually have Kyle Pitts going, just because I think he's the best overall offensive player in the draft. I think Atlanta, the stuff with Julio, he's not, I don't know if Julio's like on the move. They do owe him a lot of money. I don't necessarily know if Julio's going to be on the move, but that team, I think if they do decide to move off from Julio, he's just such a weapon. Like, you could put him on the outside, you could put him on the line. Like, he's big, physical, everything like that. You can put him on the line. You pull that up again. Then I have Penei Sewell, just because they took I equate this a lot to like when the Indianapolis Colts a couple years ago just built the O-line. They need to protect the quarterback, dude. They have their quarterback in the future. They need to protect the quarterback. With the 6th, I have Rashawn Slater, just because I think they need to. They already have a really good defense. At this point, it's just same deal. You got to protect Tua. And at 7, I actually had Jamar Chase going to Detroit, just because they just made the trade at quarterback. They traded Stafford. They bought in who was it? They bought in Goff. They bought in Goff. They just lost Kenny Golladay, so they need to replace Kenny Golladay any way they can. And I think if they're going to replace Kenny Golladay, the best bet would be probably the best receiver, though we disagree on that. I think the best receiver in this draft is Jamar Chase, but
yeah, go ahead.
So at my 8, I had Jalen Waddle. Obviously, Jalen Waddle and Jamar Chase, those two could be interchangeable. When I went with the Trey Lance, that's just because I don't know if John Elway is necessarily sold on Drew Lock, and if Trey Lance is there at 9, I think just given his ability and given his potential, that would be a good pick. Dallas at 10, nobody knows how Jerry Jones thinks. I do think that a cornerback, they definitely are in the market for a cornerback. Patrick Surtain is the best corner on the board. That's why I think they would go with Patrick Surtain at 10. The Giants at 11, Micah Parsons. You know what? I was conflicted with this because I do think either him or Christian Darrisaw could have went there, because the Giants obviously do need to bolster up that O-line. But you had a linebacker like Micah Parsons with the moves that they made this summer, with this offseason, to bring in guys like Adoree Jackson. They made the moves last offseason. They did make the trade for Leonard Williams, so they could really build something. All those Giants teams that won the Super Bowls have won on the backs of their defense. And Micah Parsons is probably the best defensive player in this draft. So that's why I think if he's there, you take him. And then I have Devontae Smith falling to the Eagles at 12, just because I do think that those concerns with a lot of these teams, the concerns with him being 160 pounds, even though he might be up to 170 now, I do think that those will concern certain guys. And the Eagles, they took that kid last year out of TCU. That didn't pan out. They need a game changer, a playmaker. Devontae Smith is that guy. So, did you want me to go to 14? Yeah, 14. Then I went Christian Darrisaw just because what they have out there in L.A., not San Diego, L.A., you have Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert's the quarterback of your future. Now you got to protect him. You can bring on weapons gradually. You got to protect him. Minnesota taking the safety, Travion, I think it's Morig, whatever his name is. That was just based off of need. I think they need a safety. Minnesota obviously has a lot of questions they have to answer. They need a safety, and that's why I think he would be he's there at that pick. Did you want me to go to 16 or?
Yeah, just finish it out.
All right. 15, I went with Mac Jones, even though a lot of people have Mac Jones going to 3. I think Mac Jones is going to fall to 15 just because a lot of these other teams are not really in the market for a quarterback outside of maybe Denver, but I don't think Denver goes. I think Denver goes more in the direction of Trey Lance.
Yeah.
And Mac Jones, a lot of people talk about what's the one thing people have always talked about when it comes to Mac Jones is there's not that many mobile quarterbacks left, but there's not that many non-mobile quarterbacks, but the one that's not mobile just won a 7 Super Bowl, even though he's not Tom Brady. He does kind of fit what the Patriots do, and that's why I think the Patriots, even though the Patriots don't really draft quarterbacks, this is the kind of guy they could bring in. He could sit behind Cam. And midway through the year, depending on how the season's going, if they're not in playoff contention, they can just give him some burn, see how he does. And then that last pick, I think I had Christian Barmore. Christian Barmore is a wild card just because I think Christian Barmore, he's a very talented defensive lineman. Personally, I want him to fall to Tennessee if Tennessee doesn't trade up. And if we keep that 22nd pick, I want him to fall to Tennessee so we could bolster our defensive line because I think he would be great, best available. But they need to just bolster that defense. They just brought in Watt. They drafted Isaiah Simmons last year. So they already have the offense with Kyler Murray. They have that dude with dreads. I know his name. I just don't say it.
I know.
They have that dude, and they just, defense. If they're going to make any type of run at the Super Bowl this year, Watt didn't go there for a rebuild. They need to be in contention.
They're going to win. They're trying to win. Let me go through mine real quick. So at 8, I have, by default, he kind of fell there because of some dominoes that fell. Kyle Pitts, I think he's worth much higher than this. Might see someone trade up to get him, but Kyle Pitts at 8 with the Panthers. Number 9, I have Trey Lance going to the Denver Broncos. He fits the mold. Bigger quarterback. The only difference between him and quarterbacks that have been picked by John Elway in the past, he's way more mobile and he's way more agile with his feet. I think Trey Lance could kind of buck that trend of bigger quarterbacks that drafted by John Elway that have not turned out well. Number 10, I think Patrick Surtain is going to be a star in the NFL, and the Cowboys need help in their secondary. He's the best cornerback available, best defensive back available at this point. They go there. Then I have the New York Giants picking Rashawn Slater. Daniel Jones has been one of the more sacked quarterbacks in the NFL. I think Rashawn Slater is going to come in and help them out and help bolster up that offensive line that really needs help. I know Johnny agrees with that. Number 12, this is where it got interesting. I had Justin Fields falling down to the Eagles, and this comes down to, I will explain more about this specific pick, but this honestly comes down to the fact that if he's there, I don't think the Eagles are going to ignore him being there. Number 13, the best linebacker in this draft, in my opinion, is Micah Parsons. I think, like you said, they could go offensive line here, but I do think they want to help bolster that defense. That defense was really bad in LA last year. They were not able to give Justin Herbert the help that he needed. In a lot of games when they were up, that defense folded. I think Micah Parsons helps out with that. Christian Darrisaw, offensive tackle, going to the Minnesota Vikings, help bolster up that line, help defend Kirk Cousins, who's going to need it after he just signed another goddamn guaranteed contract. Christian Barmore, I have going to the New England Patriots, and that is because of the rebuilding of the New England Patriots team, the rebuilding of that defensive line. I think that's the perfect spot for him as well, going there and kind of being a guy who can who can work within that Belichick system, who can work and probably grow in that Belichick system. And finally, Greg Newsome, cornerback, is the second-rated cornerback in this draft. I think that after losing out on Patrick Peterson last year, the Arizona Cardinals want to help bolster up that spot as well, get another cornerstone, another shutdown type of corner in that spot. So I have them taking Newsome there. I think that's going to help out their defense a lot. Let me start with mine. So at 17, you have him going to the Vikings. I have him going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Trevon Moehrig is going to be going to the Raiders, help bolster that defensive back position for the Las Vegas Raiders. So many names, I can't keep track of them. Then I have Elijah Vera Tucker, offensive tackle, going to Miami. I think this is a good value pick for them. There's also a lot of offensive tackle talent in this draft, guys. So I think Vera Tucker can come in, kind of take over that Laramie Tunsil spot, be a similar type of player, and really help them out as well. The Washington football team, they have had a lot of good defensive They've had a lot of good defensive players in their history. They're going to add another one here. I have them taking Jeremiah Asuwu Cormarado. That guy. I'm sorry, I butchered your name, but you are really, really good. At number 20, I have the Bears bolstering their wide receiving core, taking Rashad Bateman, adding him to an already decent core, helping out Andy Dalton or potentially Gardner Minshew. We'll talk about him in just a minute. There was a report about him. Kwity Paye going to the Indianapolis Colts. I have him going there. We'll talk about that. And then your Tennessee Titans, Andrew, I have them getting J.C. Horn. You know, they got rid of their cornerbacks. They missed out 2 years ago on the Jalen Ramsey sweepstakes. I think this is a good pick for them to get at this position. And we'll have to see how it plays out. Walker Little, I have going to the Jets. You can't have a quarterback without a good offensive tackle. Might as well pick one to help him out there. Interesting right here. 24, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Najee Harris. Things didn't work out with James Conner last year. He's been decent, but they've been missing the ability to run the ball. And if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, if you're in the AFC North, the one thing that you and I both know, Andrew, you have to be able to play defense. You have to be able to run the ball. The Steelers have not shown that they could do, honestly, either. But this pick would go a long way in picking Najee Harris, who I think is the best running back in the draft. This will go a long way in their rebuilding that offense. Next, 25, I kind of changed it up here. I thought this would be interesting. I have Travis Etienne going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. You picked the quarterback from Clemson. You might as well pick the running back who he's familiar with. You might as well pick the running back who he has chemistry with. You might as well pick the running back who I think could be a very good running back in the NFL and a game-changing back. I have Travis Etienne going in to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That offense is going to be ready to go week one. Jalen Phillips going to the Cleveland Browns, bolster that defensive line. I have Jason Owe going to the Baltimore Ravens, to my Baltimore Ravens. We lost Matthew Judon. We need help on that edge rush on the defensive line for years to come. I think he could be a game changer there. Elijah Moore adding wide receiving depth to the New Orleans Saints. Terrence Marshall, we talked a lot about last year about how they didn't help. The Packers didn't help Aaron Rodgers with their first-round pick. I think this is the year they finally do it. They're like, hey, we don't know how much longer Aaron Rodgers is going to be here. We might as well help him out and get him some help in the offense. Finishing up here, Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback, going to play along with White on that defensive back for the Bills. Dylan Radins, who I think is a very, very interesting player to watch. He was the offensive tackle at North Dakota State. He ran in a very similar offense that the Baltimore Ravens had, kind of like a play-action college-type offense, and he blocked. He did a lot of run blocking at North Dakota State for Trey Lance, who did a lot of similar things to what Lamar Jackson does. I think at 31, if he's there, the Ravens take him, because he's shown that he can be run blocking. We obviously need a right tackle. I think Dylan Radins can do that. And finally, Caleb Fairley, cornerback, bolstering that Bucs defense that is trying to repeat to win the Super Bowl.
So at 17, I have J.C. Horn. I don't think J.C. Horn, first off, J.C. Horn is the second best corner on this draft. I don't think J.C. Horn gets out of the top 20. That's why I have J.C. Horn going to the Las Vegas, I was about to call them Oakland, the Las Vegas Raiders. That Raiders defense was atrocious, and especially in the AFC West, you got the Chiefs, and if you don't have the pass rushers, at least have the corners to be able to keep up with that team in Kansas City. So J.C. Horn. At 18, I have Elijah Vera Tucker, just because I think they need to protect Tua. If he is their quarterback of the future, got to protect him. I have Washington going Rashad Bateman, just because I think they need offense now. That defense is great. They have the D-line. That D-line is one of the best. It's one of the best in the entire NFL. But you need weapons, man. Like, I think part of the reason why they couldn't get anything going against the Tampa Bay was just because they really didn't have offense like that. So add a guy like Rashad Bateman, give whoever the quarterback over there is, because we still don't know, a weapon. Then at 20, I actually had Caleb Farley. Chicago, the quarterback situation has to get figured out. Unless Chicago moves up, I think Chicago should just continue to draft the defensive player. Draft the defensive player, just have another elite defense, and give whoever you decide on your quarterback, give him an elite defense. Then I have Kwity Paye going at 21. This is, I think Indy is win now, and Kwity Paye is the second best defensive end on the board. I'd go with Kwity Paye for Indy. I have Jason Owe actually going to 22 to Tennessee, my Tennessee Titans. If Barmore is on the board, obviously I would love for Barmore if we don't trade up to try to get a wideout. But Jason Owe, I think Jason Owe, he has a very high ceiling. He's very raw, and he's not one of those guys that can step in and help now, but he's a very talented player out of Penn State, and I think Jason Owe is going to have a very successful career. Then I have Elijah Moore to the Jets, just because, they added Corey Davis. They're going to draft the quarterback, and unless they trade out of this pick to get some more, maybe get some second rounders, I think the Jets, you have one weapon in Corey Davis. Go get whoever your quarterback of the future is. Get him another one. Elijah Moore. That's simple. Pittsburgh, I think Pittsburgh's they do need a run game, but I think they could get their running back in the second round. Believe it or not, I think they can get their running back in the second round. Remember, a lot of their running backs were not first rounders. Le'Veon, James Conner, they were not first round picks. They don't like drafting running backs in the first round. So build up an O-line, protect whatever you can get out of Big Ben, whatever's left of Big Ben, protect him, and draft a running back in the second round. I then have Tevin Jackson. If they're going to draft Sunshine, they need a guy who can protect Sunshine. So draft an O-line, draft an offensive tackle, Tevin Jackson. And then this one was weird. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
Yeah, there you got it. Out
of Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, they called him like a Swiss Army knife, because apparently there's people that said he could play. He could go from defensive end to linebacker to safety. I mean, they said this dude he could play everywhere on the defensive side of the ball. So
maybe he can.
That's huge. They did just add Clowney. I think this is just another piece, because clearly Clowney's injury history, Cleveland, bolster that defense even more. You got Myles Garrett on one side, just bring in a Swiss Army knife. We don't know if Clowney's going to be able to make it the full season. We thought he would last year. We saw how that turned out. So bring in a guy like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame. He's kind of from the area. They're in Cleveland. He's from Notre Dame. So bring that guy in. I then have the Ravens. You guys, as you mentioned, you guys lost Matthew Judon. So I have you guys actually taking Jalen Phillips. Just, you need another, keep that defense. The Ravens love defense, and this is the kind of guy that I think the Ravens can plug in. They can develop him, and he's going to get better and better, because all the defensive players they draft seem to get better and better.
Yep.
I have Terrence Marshall just because Terrence Marshall, I think, could potentially be a wide receiver one. The future, you also have to get their quarterback weapons, whether it's Taysom Hill, whether it's Jameis, you got to get their quarterback some weapons, and we don't know what the future entails for who is it? Michael Thomas. So plus he played his college ball in the Bayou down at LSU. It makes sense for him to be a New Orleans Saint. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Packers need a corner, even though they didn't really have that many weapons on offense. The Packers, I think one of their team needs is a corner. Greg Newsome will be there. They'll take him. That's plain and simple. 30, I have Azeez Ojulari. He is a project, and they do have a very good defensive line there in Buffalo. This kid's, I think he's a project. He's not necessarily going to step in and be a stud right away. He's coming out of Georgia. I do think they could develop him. You know, you put him next to a guy like Ed Oliver, and I think he's just going to be a piece. Like, he's just going to be a piece to something bigger that they're going to build in that defense, right? 2 more. The Ravens are there at 31. Rondale Moore, I mean, unless they trade up with that other pick, I think they're going to take Rondale Moore. They need another wideout. Hollywood Brown is clearly not their wide receiver 1. I think Rondale Moore, he's a plug-in guy, you know, just gives them a weapon. And then at 32, if the Tampa Bay doesn't trade out of this pick, I think they take Zaven Collins just because he was the national defensive player of the year in college. So that defense was elite. Obviously, you bring in a guy like this. He's young. He's ready to play right away, but he's clearly not a finished product. You can develop him so that when it comes time, because some of those defensive players are a little bit older, and you could bring in a guy like that. So when you lose like the Ndamukong Suhs of the world, when you lose the Jason Pierre-P's of the world, plug him right in, and they can just keep it going.